The name of the program, but on my way to visit one of my students, there's a radio show which I have to be there by 7, so I get the show for about 17 minutes, coming up to 7 o'clock, and it's the one where the contestants have to sneak some truths into a load of fun. And one of the truths in last week's show was that Julius Caesar had a giraffe, which he brought back, and had apparently been a gift from Cleopatra, and that came in as a truth. But so thinking about that show, there are one or two truths in it. No prizes are offered for grabbing the right ones, but there are several truths in here, and the piece at the end I hope will come true one day. Anyway, it's called The Truth About the Tomb of Arc, short story from Armadacon 2009, and my lovely co-writer is there, and I did the other half of it. I'll give you a tenner to start you off, said Barry. He produced a crisp new note that looked as if it had been freshly printed. Knowing Barry as we did, that thought had crossed my mind. But he was basically a nice guy, unorthodox, but genuinely nice, and spontaneously generous. Many thanks. I folded it away into what was then a regrettably thin wallet. This new Wren project means a lot to us, and after the taxman took his cut, we definitely need to borrow the fare. Tell me more about your new theory, prompted Barry. Well, it goes back to 1975, when we made our first trip to Rennes-le-Château. I was lecturing for Cambridge University's extramural board at the time, and I was conducting a course called The Psychology and Sociology of Unsolved Mysteries. The chronic problem was to find new mysteries to examine in depth on site, then to present whatever data we found to the class. Barry nodded appreciatively. Wasn't that the year when Henry Lincoln broke the story on TV for the first time? Yes, he called his documentary The Priest, Painter, and the Devil. The parish priest at Rennes was Father Béranger Saunière, the painter was Nicolas Poussin, and the devil was a strange statue in the doorway of Saunière's Church of St. Mary Magdalene. I paused, thinking back to Lincoln's intriguing documentary. It had seemed so mysterious at the time that we'd decided to investigate the area ourselves and report back to our students with any data that we found there. There was a mysterious tomb just outside Rennes, the image of the one that Poussin had painted in his canvas, which was called Bergère d'Arcadie. The picture showed 3 shepherds and a shepherdess looking at the tomb. One of the shepherds was studying the inscription on it, which was, asked Barry, Et in Arcadia ego, meaning? Barry was really interested now. I knew he was an excellent linguist. He was looking for something more than a straight translation. Open to several possible interpretations, I said slowly. Some experts think it was meant to indicate that even in the happy land of Arcadia, death was present, just waiting for his next victim. Barry nodded. That makes sense. What were the other theories? Well, it could also be thought of as the voice of whoever was buried in the tomb, saying that he or she had gone to Arcadia, using Arcadia as a symbol for heaven or paradise. Barry looked thoughtful, stroked his chin, the lines on his broad forehead grew deeper. Maybe he meant that he had once enjoyed Arcadia, as the young shepherds were doing now. Well, that's certainly possible, I agreed. But other researchers, like Dan Brown, had the idea that painters such as Poussin were deeply into codes and ciphers. They were members of a secret society that guarded mysterious treasure. Well, so what's your new, different theory about the tomb, persisted Barry. What makes you so keen to get back to Rennes? He paused meaningfully. I could come up with a hell of a lot more than a tenner if I liked the idea. And the problem of raising the fare started to melt. Let's get a drink in and we'll talk you through it, I prompted. Money was no problem to Barry, although none of us knew for certain where he got quite so much of it. Over a couple of pints, I outlined our theory to him. Now, the heart of the mystery is that Béranger Saunière, an impoverished parish priest, became the richest man in the south of France in 1885 and spent money like water until his death in 1917. Rennes is surrounded by strange limestone caves, some of which are ancient Visigothic and Merovingian tombs. It was customary then for the kings and princes to be buried with their treasure and artifacts they'd need in the next world. One of the most successful ways to protect the ruler's grave and the treasure that lay within it was to use the old Visigothic technique of burying him below a riverbed. How the dickens did they manage that? Asked Barry. Well, needed a lot of manpower, disciplined manpower, I explained. First, they dammed the river. Then they excavated the bed and built a waterproof burial chamber below it. After that, they raked back the stones and gravel to cover the tomb. Finally, they broke the dam so the river flowed back over it. It would need a small army to get to a grave protected that way, even if someone could find it. Barry was nodding his understanding of how the Visigoths had done it. But where does the Tomb of Arc come into this, he asked. Well, it stands, or rather it stood, when we were there in 1975, very close to the high rocky bank of the River Salles. Not there now? Asked Barry. I shook my head. It's been bulldozed. A later owner of the land said that he was tired of the constant stream of tourists examining it. But you examined it? Oh, yes, we did. I lifted the concrete top, and my photographer, Peter, took pictures of the interior. About 12 feet down, there were two coffins, resting on wooden beams. A century ago, that tomb had belonged to a family named Lawrence. Two of them were buried in it. The concrete top was relatively recent. That was Lawrence's work. But the subterranean part was much older. Medieval at least. Possibly the Lawrences had acquired it while Béranger Saunière was still around, or very shortly after his death. They put the top closely resembling the tomb in Poussin's painting. Above the ancient excavations that went a lot deeper than the two Lawrence family coffins. So what do you think it might mean? Asked Barry urgently. I took another long pull at my beer before replying. What if there was a tunnel below the Lawrence coffins? And what if that tunnel connected the base of the medieval Tomb of Arc to a Visigothic burial chamber under the River Salles? Barry was a more than competent linguist. French was a second language to him. Berger d'Arcadie, he said slowly, sounding out every syllable. Think about Arcadie. Couldn't it really mean Arcadie? The sound's exactly the same. It's a French pun. Arc has spoken, I translated. The Tomb of Arc has told the secret. So that's where Saunière found his mysterious fortune, exclaimed Barry. He made his way into the Tomb of Arc long before the Lawrences built their new top and put the two coffins down there. And while Saunière was down there, he went along the secret tunnel below the River Sowls to the Visigothic tomb under the river bed. That's why I want to get back there, I said quietly. Count me in all the way, said Barry excitedly. I'll finance the whole trip, plus any equipment we may need, and 50-50 on what we find. Suits us, I said. And the rest, as you know, is history. Just for safety, Barry brought along 4 of his toughest heavies, who normally worked as minders at his clubs and casinos in Plymouth. And we had no trouble at all with the locals at Wren. Well, because money was no object to him, Barry actually bought the land with the tomb on it before we started work. As you know, what we found there set us up for life. Sonia had spent lavishly, but there was still a vast amount of Visigothic gold and jewels left in the burial chamber below the river. Looking back from our tax haven in the Caribbean, it seems almost impossible to believe that the whole amazing story started when Barry lent us a tenner towards the fare to Rennes-le-Château. Thank you all ever so much, and I'm now going to make space for the next storyteller. I think that Chris has got one for us, I think.
I have. What a job to follow that. Oh my God.
You do me too much honour.
I thought they'd let me go first. Did you spot the bit of truth in the story? You all know that Barry is indeed a cunning linguist.
I thought it was all truth.
And I understand that is how he earns his money. However, Barry does have another hobby.
He's not here, is he?
No, he's
She's
just
blowing
right there. I
shit
can
up.
see his head.
So, my tale is a little bit more about Barry's other hobby. I'll give you a tenner to start you off, said Barry. His visitor, dressed uniformly from head to toe in black, sported a Jasper Conran t-shirt, Tommy Hilfiger jacket and jeans. Barry was convinced that the hand-tooled leather boots were Nashville Cowboy, $3,000 of anybody's hard-earned. A faint smell of sulphur competed uneasily with his Calvin Klein cologne, and as he shuffled in his seat, a slight movement beneath the exquisitely tailored jacket in the vicinity of his shoulder blades made Barry feel a little queasy. That's a very fine offer. The visitor's voice was molten Lindt chocolate poured over shards of shattered glass. But it's really in the soprano and bass baritone range that we're short. Leaning conspiratorially forwards, the visitor confided, just between ourselves, my prince will be extremely. Somehow he managed to speak the word as if it was underlined. Disappointed. If the heavenly choir wins the immortal iced Edfod for the 4,000th consecutive year. Having engineered an acute shortage of beddable females in Cornwall and Wales, and introduced sheep farming in a big way, he was certain that a massive influx of sin, he tapped his nose and winked in a most unpleasant manner, would send hordes and choirs of miners and farmers our way. But for the likes of Bragg and Wesley with their sermonizing on divine grace and forgiveness, it would have been a masterful plan. Turning his head, the visitor spat meaningfully on the floor and a small curl of smoke rose from Barry's aging linoleum. While I wouldn't want to see your prince disappointed, I'm not entirely sure what he expects me to do about it, Barry prevaricated. The visitor's teeth gleamed unnaturally white as he cracked a wide grin. Crikey, thought Barry. I bet he's been to the Smile Centre. The effect of the smile, however, was not uplifting, more closely resembling a lupine growl. Well, chopped it over glass again. I believe that this enterprise is exactly suited to you and your Armadacon chums. So it was that on a Thursday evening 2 weeks later, Barry found himself in the dead of night, skulking outside a large wooden hut. By the guttering light of an antique Zippo, it was just possible to read the sign over the door proclaiming Bodmin Young Farmers Club. A crudely executed poster was just visible through the grubby window announcing, "Choir practice here every Friday, 7 p.m. Tribute ale and sandwiches provided." "Can you pick the lock?" came Dave Anderson's coarse whisper over Barry's right shoulder. "I don't know. Roll a d20 and see." In the dim Zippo illumination, they could just see the numbers. 19, muttered Dave. "That should do it." A muted clunk sounded from the catch, and the door creaked loudly open. "Damn, bodged the stealth roll," Barry groaned. "Let's get inside," wheezed Dave, struggling to heave a sack truck laden with sound and lighting gear over the threshold. "You set the charges, I'll wire up inside." It was well past midnight by the time they joined the third member of the party back in their rooms at the Lamb and Artichoke, the only Cornish public house ever to receive the coveted Pirelli Comet Award. Friday dawned grey and damp. The day passed sluggishly, like sucking a melted chocolate bunny through an empty biro refill. The three passed the time building perfect scale models of Daleks, using only pipe cleaners and an ancient set of dominoes that David found in the games cupboard. Tense though they were, much hilarity was shared as intoning, "Oh, bugger," gurgling Dalek dialect, Barry lit the fuses to the Chinese firecrackers hidden within and sent the Daleks spinning skywards with a succession of staccato explosions, leaving a heady whiff of cordite in the public lounge. As the arthritic chiming mechanism of the hall clock groaned into action at exactly 6 p.m, the friends arose wordlessly and, keeping strict party order, made their way to their hiding place at the rear of the Young Farmers Club hut. They had only a short time to wait before the first choristers arrived, animatedly discussing the merits and pitfalls of the European Common Agricultural Policy and the size of the barmaid's tits at the Duck and Faggot. As the darkness drew in, sounds of agricultural harmony began to drift forth. The dark visitor was not mistaken in identifying this particular choral gathering as being in championship winning form. At 8:30 sharp, the music ceased to be replaced by faint sounds of pints being pulled and sandwiches being munched. Pulling their balaclavas down into place, trying manfully to ignore the irritating flapping of the labels bearing the legend, "Knitted Handicrafts by Mrs. Boggis." Dave punched the power button on the remote, which had been concealed inside his camo jacket, borrowed for the occasion from one of Barry's army chums. At once the calm Cornish night was rent from within the hut by garish stage lighting and the strident chords of The Stripper at volume 11 from the speakers cunningly arranged in the rafters. Simultaneously, the World War II blackout curtain, which had masked off the farthest end of the hut since Armistice Day in 1945, nobody had any idea why, fell away and revealed a dancer gyrating suggestively in perfect time with the music. The black dress was tight and short, the seams of the fishnets snaking erotically down to the sequin strappy sandals with killer heels. Someone's guessed who it is already. At first the young farmers were understandably bewildered, but as one arm behind the stripper's back began to slowly lower the zipper, revealing the thin fastening of a La Perla brassiere stretched across the smooth white back, mutterings of confusion were replaced by cheers and wolf whistles. A few more moments of sensual hip action had the cheers turning to howls of lust and animal passion. Chairs, tables and pint glasses flew in all directions as the crazed young men sought to clasp this maddening vision. At the last possible moment, as the black dress slid down over his wiggling hips, Dave Trace dived through the open back door.
I've been tangled, haven't I?
He dived through the open back door into the sandbag shelter which the three friends had constructed last night. Needing no further signal, Barry pressed the red button on the detonator, nestling between his thighs, and the night erupted into a cacophony of thunder and lightning. As the dust settled and the ringing in their ears subsided, Dave pulled the Battlestar Galactica coverall over his lingerie and muttered, "Can't beat a bit of lust, especially when there's no time for repentance." "Well, it's all in a good cause," said Barry. Realising the lights and speakers were still inside, "Oh, bugger," said Dave.